Chapter 5. Now the Amorite and Canaanite kings heard how the Lord had dried up the Jordan River. They heard how he had dried it up for the Israelites until they had gone across it. The Amorite kings lived west of the Jordan. The kings of Canaan lived among the Mediterranean Sea. When all those kings heard what the Lord had done, they were terrified. They weren't brave enough to face the Israelites anymore. Circumcision and Passover at Gilgal. At that time, the Lord said to Joshua, "Make knives out of flint. Use them to circumcise the men of Israel." So Joshua made knives out of flint, then he used them to circumcise the men of Israel at Gibeah's Harlos. Here's why Joshua circumcised them. All the men who came out of Egypt had died. They died while they were wandering through the Sinai desert. They were the men old enough to serve in the army. All the men who came out hadn't been circumcised. But all the men born in the desert during the journey from Egypt hadn't been circumcised. The Israelites had moved around in the desert for 40 years. By the end of that time, all the men old enough to serve in the army when they left Egypt and died. It's because they hadn't obeyed the Lord. He had made a promise to them. He had told them they wouldn't see the land as the land he had promised to their people to give us as a land that has plenty of milk and honey. Because they hadn't obeyed him, he raised up their sons to take their place. They were the ones Joshua circumcised. They hadn't been circumcised yet. That's because no one had circumcised them during the journey. So Joshua circumcised all those men. The whole nation remained in the camp until the men were healed. Then the Lord spoke to Joshua. He said, "Today I have taken away from you the shame of being slaves in Egypt." That's why the place where the men were circumcised had been called Gilgal to this very day. The Israelites celebrated the Passover feast. They observed it on the evening on the 14th day of the month. They did it while they were camped at Gilgal on the plains around Jericho. The day after the Passover, they ate some of the food grown in the land. On that same day, they ate grain that had been cooked. They also ate bread made without yeast. The manna stopped coming down the day after they ate the food grown in the land. The Israelites didn't have manna anymore. Instead, that year they ate food grown in Canaan. Israel captures Jericho. When Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him. The man was holding a sword. He was ready for battle. Joshua went up to him. He asked, "Are you on our side or are you on the side of our enemies?" "I am not on either side," he replied. "I have come as the commander of the Lord's army." Then Joshua fell with his face to the ground. He asked the men, "What message does my Lord have for me?" The commander of the Lord's army replied, "Take off your sandals. The place you are standing on is holy ground." So Joshua took them off. Life in Bible times. Jericho's wall. Jericho was not a huge city, but it sat high up on a hill. Its walls were high and thick, so thick that people built their houses in them. See Joshua 2, part 15. The Israelite soldiers probably looked at Jericho and wondered how they would ever be able to scramble up that hill and then go over such huge walls. But God had an answer for the high walls of Jericho. You can read it about in Joshua 6. Dear God, learned about scripture. Joshua chapter 5 today. Today we're learning if we do things with God, if we want to do things with God, then we need to first sanctify our bodies and mind, of course, and we will actually do that, and we're going to trust you forever. Thank you always, and amen. So I need to end the lesson today, so thank you for watching my videos. I hope I see you next time, so see you next time. Goodbye.